Thank you for the introduction. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Shuswap Nation, and I'd like to thank Gordon and Dallas and everyone else that made this event possible. It's been an exceptional day, and I wasn't able to attend yesterday, but two of my colleagues were, and they said it was a great day, so congratulations. Clicker. So there's a few things that I'd actually like to preface my presentation here on. First and foremost is Gordon had asked that we lean this towards the theme of benefits, and I don't want to leave you all with the impression that large resource development projects don't have impacts. Of course they do, but what I'm hoping to do through this presentation, through this in the next 20 minutes or so, and I do recognize that I am the last on the agenda, is to provide you some insights and ideas on how you can leverage potential project proposals within your backyard for your community and have your community's interests realized. So building off a lot of the themes that Dan just shared with us a few seconds ago. So just a quick little blurb about the company I work for and I'm a part of, Urban Systems. Many of you may have heard of us, given the audience, but we are a professional services firm that has what we call a higher calling, which is spirit and service for vibrant communities. So our primary client base are communities, both large and very, very small. We have been in business for 40 years. We started in Kamloops, so we've got some, I think, humble roots. I think our well, you could say we don't have a headquarters, but nevertheless, the accounting team of Urban Systems sits in Kamloops still. So, and we provide a variety of services: civil engineering, planning, community economic development, energy stuff, and so on and so forth. I won't bore you with that. Just to give you a bit of insight on where I've learned about what I'm going to share with you this afternoon, I thought it'd be worthwhile just highlighting that we've worked with a number of communities, both local government and First Nation communities, in responding to some pretty big projects that you may have heard of, one being the Site C project, the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion Project, LNG pipelines, so there's numerous of those proposed, renewable energy projects, which tend to have a little bit more social license within communities, but that's not always the case. Nevertheless, helping communities respond and leverage those types of projects, natural gas development, in particular in the Peace region, working with, again, with local governments and First Nation communities, coal, and precious metal mines, and responding to those and participating and helping them participate, within environmental assessment processes, National Energy Board processes, and all that rigmarole. And then, perhaps more importantly, in some parts of British Columbia and throughout Canada, just starting to think about what cumulative effects mean to communities and how major resource development projects and large and rapid industrial development, what does that mean to the community from a social, economic, cultural, and environmental perspective. So, and I guess one of the other caveats, which I didn't get to earlier, that I think is still very, very important to put in front of you all, is that there is a spectrum of proponents that you may or may not experience if a project proposal is in your backyard. There's the good. In fact, there's the exceptional, there's the good, there's the bad, and then there's the ugly, and then there's just disastrous. And I think it's important when these folks show up in your communities to get a sense of where they fall on that spectrum, because it does make your life potentially a lot easier, or it can make it really difficult, and it can really, communities can be significantly impacted by major project proposals, especially once they're constructed. So in terms of key messages, I just wanted to leave you with these, like, even if I don't get through all my slides, I recognize again that I have the last one up and 4:30 is just around the corner, but I wanted to leave you with key messages early in my presentation. And that they are traditionally rural communities throughout Canada have experienced boom bust cycles and because of the natural resource development or natural resource sector. There are countless examples, and I'm sure you've all experienced them in some way or another, or know someone that has. In terms of future developments, there are opportunities now, at least in my experience, where you can, if your community is ready and able and willing to be proactive, to help smoothen those boom-bust cycles, create mutual benefits, so those, creating win-win scenarios, and support your community's key priorities. To do so, I think you need to be ready, strategic, and willing not to define your position on a project proposal too soon. I'm not saying you can't define it, I'm not saying you can't be yes, no, which creates a whole bunch of interesting dynamics, but I think holding your cards tight for a while is a strategic thing to do for many reasons. I might just skip quickly over this, but where I think this slide here, I guess the message that I want to leave you with is that we've had a bit of a convergence of themes and events and things happening in the world, at least from a macro perspective, and that is really, we've seen the Joe Cohen Supreme Court case. We've got industry trying really hard to get their products offshore. North American markets, in particular for energy products, are weak these days, so everyone wants to get their natural gas to Asia or their bitumen to Asia. As well as, there's a few project examples that you might have heard about, like Northern Gateway, where their social license of Enbridge has been really hurt over the past while. As well as the general public's thinking about environmental issues and asking really tough questions around these types of projects, and as they should. So, but what this has created is an interesting space and an interesting dynamic that I would observe is that you're seeing many major resource development companies and energy infrastructure companies saying, hey, maybe we should work with communities in a proactive way, understand their interests, and work together to create mutual benefit. So this, again, creates opportunity. So I think that some of these companies are recognizing, it sounds like ATCO may be on board, but obviously some aren't. So in terms of how does it start? So if you're a community, you're just sitting there and you're thinking, and then all of a sudden someone comes knocking on your door with a $5 billion project in your backyard. You're like, whoa. Well, it starts with understanding what does community readiness mean, and I'll just read this out. It's really just understanding the likely impacts of major initiatives on the community, and to have in place ways to avoid, mitigate, or compensate potential negative impacts, and leverage potential positive impacts and opportunities. So, I'm going to go through these four themes here, considerations as it relates to community readiness. This may be an oversimplification of this space, but because in fact it is actually quite a messy world out there. But I think if you think about these four things as pillars and keep them in your back pocket, you might be able to leverage these opportunities, create mutual benefits and lasting benefits for your community. So understanding your community's priorities, start with that one. Really this is, you may already know what your community's priorities are, right? In particular, like before a project proposal comes into your, knocking on the door, you've probably already got your OCP, or if you're a First Nation community, a comprehensive community plan. You might have a strategic plan, a sustainability plan that really articulates your community's interests and ideas as to how your community will develop and move forward. except that someone's just throwing sort of a wrench in that potentially. So you gotta, that gives you a good reference spot, or a reference framework. But at the same time, you need to start thinking about, well, what are your community's interests as it relates to a specific project proposal? So, well, that really is when community engagement and listening to your community, the people that live and work and play there come into the equation. And I'll give you an example I think was a pretty neat community engagement process, which is the City of Fort St. John, the Site C energy project. I don't know why, but that's the actual title of the proposal. I don't use the word clean personally, but that's my own value. Anyways, this is an 1,100 megawatt dam that is proposed by the Crown Corporation, titled BC Hydro. It's about a $9 billion project. If you take the cost estimates at face value, it's going to have a significant additional impact to the Peace River and the land in and around there. And it's been an interesting project to sort of observe and help communities, both local government and First Nations, think about and respond to. So I've actually spent quite a bit of time with a number of communities up in the Peace region over the past few years. But what I wanted to do is use this example here. So the City of Fort St. John undertook a process called Let's Talk Site C. And really what this was a process that was undertaken by the city to, before any decisions were made from a regulatory perspective and so on and so forth, they said, well, what does the community think about this project if it were to be built? Should it be built? So they're asking some pretty big questions and really trying to understand the community's perspective on the project. You can see what the media says about projects, whether it be local, national, or provincial, regional, newspapers, Twitter, and all that. There's a ton of stuff out there on these types of projects. I just saw another article come through today on the economics of Site C. There are so many opinions on projects, but don't forget about your own communities. This is, I guess, the key message, because that is where you will understand your interests and your community's interests, and that enables you as the leadership or as administrators or whatever your role is to actually engage in a proactive conversation with a project proponent, assuming they're willing to have that conversation. Whether or not I'll leave Site C. The next one is assessing the social and economic impacts of a project. So I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of a social impact assessment or a socio-economic impact assessment. A few people? Okay, these are assessments that are typically done by the proponent. They hire a consulting firm who may be located in wherever in the world, and they come in and try and undertake an assessment of your community and how the project proposal may or may not impact your community. Which is, here's a definition of it. And basically what this is traditionally, again, being done by the proponents. What we're starting to see now is that, and I was part of one of these projects, their assessments recently, as it relates to an LNG pipeline proposal, is that the community did their own socioeconomic impact assessment. It was funded by the proponent, so they said, okay, well, here's some money, and you go off and you tell us how you think this project's going to impact us, or your community, and then we're going to put that into our environmental assessment, which will go before the provincial and federal agencies. Wow, it's like game-changing, at least from my perspective, versus the proponent guessing what the impacts might be. So again, and from my experience in participating in a community-led social impact assessment, is that the community started to assess what really mattered to them. Like, for example, they had issues with respect to underemployment. So you can spend some time assessing why that's the case, and then thinking about solutions. And this will get you to, and I guess I'm sort of giving away a bit of the story here, but with respect to that, you can go back to the proponent and say, hey, you are developing this project and there are labor shortages and we have a community that is, if you will, chronically underemployed. How do we work together to create mutual benefit, i.e. create skills, trades, people within communities? They can work on your project, but more importantly, they can work on other things once the project has been constructed and is in operation. Because the jobs of these types of projects tend to come like this and then fall off. So thinking about it from a long-term perspective can create lasting benefits. Proactively engaging the proponent. This again, the theme here is really, I want to again leave you with is really appreciating and understanding your own priorities first and foremost, but then also being willing to step out of perhaps your comfort zone and be proactive in engaging or reaching out to a proponent, even before they do, in terms of reaching out to you. Often communities will sit back and wait and say, oh, why haven't they knocked on our door? They might not know that they're supposed to knock on your door. Some of these folks, they like to, they like turbines and pipes. They don't know a whole bunch about how to build goodwill within communities. So don't be afraid to say, you know what, you're thinking of, like, even if you just hear rumors about something in and around your community, in your backyard, traditional territory, knock on their door and say, hey, I hear you're sniffing around, what's up? And anyways, and build the relationship, but perhaps most importantly, don't be afraid to ask how you can create a win-win scenario. And I'm going to give you a few examples here where communities that I know of have started to think outside of the box as it relates to a project proposal in their backyard, and have created some pretty interesting concepts, partnerships, and real projects. So by asking how you can create a win-win scenario, one of the most recent examples that I know of, and unfortunately some of these I'm not privy to disclose names of the communities themselves and the proponents, but there's a worker camp proposed within a municipality's boundaries, and it's like, I think it's supposed to be like 1,500 workers, so which is roughly about the same size as the community itself. So you're like, holy moly, like there's a whole bunch of dynamics happening here. At the same time, the community's long sought funding and resources to upgrade their wastewater facility. Hold on a sec. So where are these people? How are you going to deal with their wastewater at a 15? Okay, well, if you're going to have to build potentially a standalone system for a camp, and we need an upgrade to our facility, maybe we can work together and create a mutual benefit. And there you go. Problem solved, and it was in part because the community was willing to say, hey, pick up the phone and say, we would like to create this mutual benefit. Here's our needs. And they listed off more than just the wastewater example. But they, their top 3 examples or priorities, and then said, where do anything catch your attention here? Interesting. I've already mentioned the First Nations employment strategy example, which I guess the one thing I'd add to that is that it isn't pertaining specifically to the project that the proponent is most interested in from the community's perspective. It meets the proponent's needs potentially, but it's about creating skills and training opportunities for the people of this community to extend beyond the life of the project. So so really leaving a lasting legacy. A reclaimed water facility, which I'll talk about in a second. Examples of brownfield remediation and revitalization. Most communities that I've ever been in have at least one brownfield. And community beautification. There's an example of that with respect to a proposed project coming from Edmonton to Burnaby. Fourth, implement. So here's an example of thinking outside of the box. In the city of Dawson Creek, I know you guys have your name tags that say Dawson Creek, but you may have heard about this project. This is a project where, generally speaking, Dawson Creek has a poor supply of water. They rely on the Cascatna River as their primary supply of drinking water. Actually, it's their only supply, I think. Anyways, there is not a lot of water in the river, and it basically, you get your freshet, and then it goes dry. And so Dawson Creek is very water conscientious as a community. At the same time, there's a huge amount of industrial activity, in particular natural gas, hydraulic fracking, which requires a significant amount of water. Well, what was traditionally happening was the fracking folks, the natural gas folks, would come and take raw water from the city of Dawson Creek's scarce supply of water. So, through some outside of the box thinking and some dialogue and some idea sharing, Shell Canada said, you know what, why don't we use wastewater, treated wastewater? And so what happened is that essentially the city of Dawson Creek built this reclaimed water facility, as well as did a few upgrades, as I understand it, to the wastewater facility. And now they have, the Shell Canada has a secure supply of fracking water, input that is critical to their operations, and the city of Dawson Creek is no longer giving or selling its raw water to industry, or as much at least, and saving that for the residents of the community. So again, creating, I think, a pretty neat example of a win-win scenario. So just some concluding remarks, and I think I tried to hit on these also. It might sound like a bit of a repeat. Really, it's all about understanding your community's priorities. Don't sit back and wait for the proponent to tell you what their interests are. Seek to understand what their proponent's interests are and what they're looking to do in and around your community. Don't be too quick to define a position on a project. I'm not saying you can't have a yes/no opinion on it, and then there's a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox. If you say no, some of them work, some of them don't. I'd caution personally to just learn about the project proposal, think about it from this perspective first, and then get to a decision on or a yes/no maybe under certain conditions. Position. Be proactive and ask the proponent how you can create win-win scenarios, because I think you'd be surprised that they can be had. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions,